And thanks to the organizers for having me to speak on this topic. This is a joint work with Chang Tai-Sheh of University of Chicago and Michael Sun of Chinese University of Hong Kong. As you can see, this is a very big title. I'm not going to be comprehensive on all the literature about, all the thinking about institutional foundations of China's growth. I'm going to focus on this paper that I'm working on with my co-authors. The question we try to answer is phrased here. And according to many measures, China doesn't have very high quality formal institutions. I will present some numbers so that you can see this. But on the other hand, China has achieved very respectable economic growth rate in the last 35 years or so. And then for people who are interested in institutional economics, then this seems to be a puzzle. A major theme in institutional economics is that a solid institutional foundation is a prerequisite for economic growth. But in China, there seems to be a contradiction to that thought. So let me give you some idea about the quality of formal institutions in China. Let me give you this one particular example. In China, for a business to get the license it requires to operate, it can be a long march. And of course, the government is doing a lot of work in this area, trying to reduce the red tapes, but still the obstacles for a business to become operational is high. For example, to get some license, it needs more than 30 administrative approvals. It requires about 100 stamps of approval from different government agencies. It will take at least 272 days. And these numbers, how does it compare to other countries? The World Bank does a survey every year. It publishes a report. The report is titled Doing Business. In this report, the World Bank publishes indicators measuring the quality of formal institutions, mostly about business environment for 185 countries and economies. And in this survey, there are many different areas. There are actually now 10 different areas. Starting a business is one of the 10 indicators. In this area, China doesn't rank well. Among 185 economies, we rank 151. And, well, that doesn't look very good. And if you look at getting construction permit, we also rank very low. It's getting construction permit is extremely difficult. It will take, if you do it according to papers, then it will take 3.5 years. We rank somewhere around 170 among 185 countries. So these indicators of formal institutions doesn't paint a rosy picture about China's business environment. However, as I said earlier, the economy has been growing very rapidly. And what happens? Why, with such poor measures of formal institutions, the economy can grow so fast? And let me give you one particular, one very special example. I think this example is not an outlier. It's actually very representative. Of course, this is a big case. There are something special about this, but I still think it's very representative. And we all know there is a company called Foxconn, which assembles the iPhone for Apple. It's one of the biggest companies in the world. And in 2009, sorry about the typo, it's Henan province. It's not Hehan province. Officials from Henan province approached Foxconn. Foxconn, actually at that time, Foxconn had a lot of controversy about it. But despite of all those controversies, officials from Henan province approached Foxconn and trying to convince Foxconn to set up businesses in Henan province. Then in next year, in May 2010, a team from Foxconn visited Henan province. Then soon afterwards, the governor of the province welcomed the chairman of Foxconn, Mr. Guo Taiming, to visit Henan. Then 9 days later, an agreement was signed. And with the agreement, everything was expedited. And just less than a month later, the business was registered. As we saw earlier, it takes much longer to register your business. But in the case of Foxconn, it's very fast. And another month later, the business started to produce. And let me show you one picture at the lower right corner. You can, for those who read Chinese, you can see that how special this deal is. In order to facilitate the construction of the business, the government set aside a specific section of road. This road can only be used by the construction vehicles, by vehicles who are carrying construction equipment and materials for Foxconn. Other people cannot travel on this road. So you can see that from the time the government official approached Foxconn to the time the business started production, it only took 1 year. This is China's speed. This is, even compared to international experiences, this is very, very fast. So we seem to see this contradiction. The World Bank indicators doesn't paint a very rosy picture about the business environment in China, but on the ground, in reality, some businesses get started very easily. They get a lot of preferential treatment. So this is the basic of our paper. That is, in China, formal institutions indeed are not very good. If you do everything according to the official procedures on the paper, it may take a long time for businesses to start. There are a lot of obstacles to businesses, and some of the papers, some of the documents are conflicting one another. If you follow the books, some things just simply cannot be done. Okay, so the official obstacles to businesses are very high. However, in reality, not everybody have to follow the procedures on the books. There are ways for you to circumvent those rules on the books. And when you do that, you get the help of local government officials to do that. If you can somehow convince the local government official to help you, they can help you overcome a lot of the obstacles. As a result, the cost to business can be lowered substantially. Then the question is, why and how? For the local government official to be able to help you, they have to have the power, to have the capacity to help you. In the case of Foxconn, the local government designated a section of the road as specifically used by Foxconn. So they have the power to do that. They have the resources to do that. Actually, Henan province also built an airport for a business. So they control, local governments in China have very strong capacity. They control a lot of resources so that they have the resources to help you. They also have a lot of discretional power. When the rules are conflicting with one another, they can help you to overcome the difficulty. So strong local capacity is an important element behind the story that I just offered. Having the ability to offer help doesn't mean they will do it. In a lot of countries, governments do have the capacity to help, but they don't. They have to have the incentives to help you as well. So what are the incentives for these local governments to help? This is one key element of our story. We believe that in China, local government officials did have strong incentives to help. Maybe because of career concerns. For this purpose, they help you. There are also other benefits they can derive from the success of some businesses. So this gives them another reason to help you. So the capacity for the local government to help business and the incentive combined with the incentives for the local government to help are the two key elements behind the model, the story I just talked about. Still, this is not the end of the story. If these are the only elements there, then you can quickly get into trouble. Imagine a local government helps a business to be successful in this region. Suppose there is an entrant who has a better technology, who can be more efficient at producing the same good as the incumbent. Because the incumbent received help from the local government officials, the local government official is committed to see the success of this firm that they helped. When an entrant comes in and poses a threat to the incumbent, how do you think the local government would respond to the entering threat? Most likely, they will try to protect the incumbent. So the entrant will face a very difficult position. When they enter a market, when the market has an incumbent that is, let me call, a crony to the local government officials, then this entrant will face a lot of difficulties. So although the story I just mentioned does seem to be helpful in promoting businesses, but when it comes to competition, it may hinder competition. So that's a potential problem to this model of economic growth. Fortunately, in China, there are many different local regions. And in each region, the local government is empowered. In each region, the local government has strong state capacity to help you. They also have strong incentives to help you. If you try to get into one region where you have an incumbent competitor and where you cannot get government support, you can always go to another region. Somehow you can find another region where there is no existing competitor. There, the local government is willing to help you. So that's another key element of our model. So in the model I'm going to present to you, I would like to ask you to keep these three key components in mind. One is strong local state capacity. The second one is strong local incentives. Third one is there are many empowered local governments that are competing to help businesses. So I'm going to present a very simple model first. Then, in order to get richer results, we extend the model. Then I will talk about the limitations of the model. The model means not only our mathematical model, it also means the China model, model of business development. And finally, I will present some evidence in support of this theory. So let's start with the simple toy model. In this model, we assume that there are many agents, and some of the agents are very potentially productive, others are less so. So we have a measure of productivity for each of the agents. you can rank these agents according to their productivity. And each agent can choose either to engage in home production. If they engage in home production, the productivity is A. But if they can also choose to engage in modern production. If they engage in modern production, they will be more productive. Okay? If the institutions have very good quality. So this gamma is greater than 1. However, because of the poor quality of formal institutions, if you don't get help from the local government officials, then the actual productivity is not gamma times A. Rather, there is a business cost or friction. This cost is caused by these very complicated business environment. If you don't get help from the local government official, the actual productivity is 1 minus phi times gamma. This is less than 1. That means if you don't get help from the local government, engaging in modern production is less productive than engaging in home production. That's our basic assumption. So these assumptions incorporate the idea that formal institutions are weak. As I said earlier, local government officials can help you to overcome some of the difficulties. And we assume that it is really hard for local government officials to improve formal institutions. Improving formal institutions here is modeled as reducing the business cost for everybody. And here I just said that it's difficult for the local government official to improve formal institutions. You can also say, in addition, that there is no incentives. There are weak incentives for local officials to improve formal institutions. They will have the same result. And but at the same time, local officials can reduce the business cost for some selected agents. So they will not, or they cannot do it for everyone, but they can pick some people to help. Okay, so this is they can offer preferential treatment to some of the businesses, and there is a cost to this. The cost of helping one business is assumed to be a fixed number, F. So for the local government official, he will trade off the benefit. He will compare the benefit he can get from helping a business to the cost he will have to incur in this process. The cost we assume to be F, as I just said. What are the benefits the local government official can derive from helping the business? And here, the fallback position for the business is to engage in home production. But if the business can get help from the local government official, the business will become more productive. So we consider the gain from this help. And we assume that the local official who is helping the business will get part of the gain from the business getting the help. Okay, so this part is the surplus. Anyways, B is the private benefit the local government official gets from helping a business. The expression of the beta is the gain from engaging in modern production over engaging in home production. Okay, and the local official gets part of the gain. And this part of the gain, we call it private benefit to the local government. This private benefit can take many forms. It can be real private economic gain. In some cases, the local business, the private business, may bribe the local official. This would offer economic gain to the local official. But sometimes the local official can also derive benefits from the success of the company through political gains. Okay, when the businesses are successful, this local official will get higher evaluation from the central government because of the economic success in the region. Sometimes they also get fulfillment from seeing a business succeed in the local region. So there are many different channels through which the government official can get private benefit. Some are more benign, some are less so. And so the local official compares this private benefit to the cost. If the benefit exceeds the cost, the official will decide to help the local firm. Otherwise, the firm will not get the help. So those firms who get the help will engage in modern production. So they, when you compare the private benefit to the cost, then you get this constraint. We call it the preferential treatment constraint. If this constraint is satisfied, then the private benefit the local official receives exceeds the cost he has to incur in helping this firm. So when this condition is satisfied, the agent will get the help. Then the agent will decide to engage in modern production. So this A bar, this number A bar expression on the right of the inequality is a measure of the hurdle the firm has to face. If your productivity is below this hurdle, then this firm will not get help. Then this firm will just engage in home production. Otherwise, if its productivity exceeds the hurdle, then the firm gets help and engages in modern production. And this hurdle is, yes?
Why beta is not endogenous?
We can make beta endogenous. It won't affect our, we have done that. It won't affect the basic analysis. But here, in order to make it really simple, we make it exogenous. And this hurdle depends on two parameters. One is theta. Recall that theta is the, if the local government official is willing to help you, then the local government official can help you to reduce the friction by theta. So theta is the amount of the degree to which the local government official to help you to reduce cost. And this is a measure of state capacity. When state capacity is strong, the local government can do more to help you, then it can help you to reduce costs by a larger extent. So when state capacity is stronger, this hurdle is lowered. Okay, then more businesses engage in modern production. Beta is a measure of how much private benefit the local government official can derive from helping the business. It can here we assume it to be exogenous. It's a measure of how much tolerance there is for the local official to get private benefit, and we can tell more complicated stories about this. And the higher is beta, the more easily it is for the local official to get private benefit, the more willing the local official will help businesses, the lower is the hurdle. So if we have this distribution of the productivity, then A bar is the threshold point. Those firms to the left will engage in home production. Those firms to the right of A bar engage in modern production. For just to make it easier to describe these firms, we call these firms on the right the cronies, those firms on the left, non-cronies. And so in this model here, this very simple model here already incorporates two of the three key elements. One is strong local capacity. strong state capacity. The other is the incentive for the government to help businesses. And the third point is illustrated here. I talked about this. This point is that having many regions is essential to this model. Assume that the fixed cost for the government to help the local business to reduce cost is a one-off cost. It's after you help the firm, the firm will you don't need to help the firm any further, and so this will introduce a bias against potential entrants to a market where incumbents are cronies, because for the local government official, the cost F has already been sunk for these cronies. In order to help a new firm, the local official will have to incur another cost. So the new firm has to be very, very competitive against the compared to the incumbent to be able to receive help. So if the new firm is only marginally more competitive, then the new firm will be rejected. So that's an obstacle to innovation. You cannot expect all innovation to be revolutionary. Some innovation is just marginal. And for the economy to be successful, you need to accommodate these marginal innovations. However, if there is only one region, then these marginal innovators will not be able to get the help. So fortunately, there are many different regions. If the business cannot get help in this region, then it can always go to another region where there is no competition. So this is the third key element here. So that's the simple model. In this model, we illustrate how state capacity is useful, is important, why incentives is important, why having many regions is important. Next, I will present an extended model. Here, we will introduce more. We will try to establish a connection between those firms that are cronies with those firms that are non-cronies. Okay. And here, instead of having a very simple production function, we assume that production output not only depends on your productivity, it also depends on capital investment. So K indicates capital investment. For home production, the production function is on the top. And for modern production, we have another production function there. And so all these are the same, except that we are adding capital to these production functions. And we make similar assumptions about reducing business frictions as in a simple model. But now we introduce an additional assumption. That is, if a firm is a crony that gets help from the government, not only the government will help you to reduce business frictions, the government will also help you to acquire capital at a lower cost. Okay, so this tau here describes measures how much benefit you get from preferential treatment in getting capital. Okay, then given this lowered cost of capital, the firm maximizes profit by equating marginal product of capital to the cost of capital. Then after some calculation, we can recalculate the private benefit for a government official to help a business. We compute, after looking at the profit maximizing condition, we compute the surplus, etc. Then we get a new constraint. This new constraint, new preferential treatment constraint looks more complicated, but it shares the same qualities as in a simple model. That is, if the state capacity is stronger, if theta is bigger, the hurdle is lower. If beta is bigger, the hurdle is lower as well. But in addition, this hurdle is also affected by the size of tau. That is how much distortion there is in the cost of capital. And but this tau here is assumed to be endogenously determined. Okay, and here we assume that the total supply of capital is given. Total K is given. We also assume that KC, which is the amount of capital that is controlled by the local government, that is at the discretion of the local government, this KC is also given. Later, I will talk about factors that affect KC. So given these two numbers, K and KC, these two conditions here helps to pin down the market interest rate R and the capital market distortion tau. Okay, so these are the equations that helps you to determine these numbers. Then how is the market interest rate and the amount of distortion affected by the resources controlled by the local government? When the local government have more resources, it affects, there are two different effects. One is the intensive margin, the other is the extensive margin. For the intensive margin, when the local government official controls more resources, it can offer better deals to the cronies. Sorry, there's another typo here. Tau actually becomes larger. Tau is the benefit the cronies receive in terms of getting capital. And but when the local officials controls more resources, it gives better deals to the cronies. The market sector will face higher cost. There is some kind of crowding out. When the cronies get more capital, the other firms that do not get preferential treatment will pay a higher cost of capital. So that's the intensive margin. At the extensive margin, the level of KC that measures the amount of resource controlled by the local government also affect how many firms engage in modern production, how many firms engage in home production. When KC is larger, the hurdle becomes lower for firms to get into modern production. There will be more cronies. So that is at the extensive margin, when more firms engage in modern production, there's higher efficiency. So there are two effects of a higher KC. When at the intensive margin, there is more distortion. That causes misallocation. That's bad for efficiency. At the extensive margin, when KC is larger, more firms engage in modern production. That's better for efficiency. So you have the trade-off of these two effects. And I'm not going to talk about these. I will just show you a diagram to illustrate these results. In these diagrams, the horizontal axis indicates the level of resources, the amount of resources available for the local government that can be used to help firms, to subsidize firms. When KC is larger, A bar, which is the height of the hurdle, becomes lower, so more firms engage in modern production. At the same time, when KC becomes larger, the top right panel shows the market interest rate and the difference between the interest rate faced by cronies. And we can see that when KC becomes larger, market interest rate becomes higher. And the amount of distortion, which is the gap between the blue and red, becomes wider. So distortion becomes wider. And so you have these trade-offs. Initially, when KC is small, the extensive margin has a bigger, stronger effect. The A bar drops very quickly, but the gap between the red and blue doesn't change that much. So the extensive margin effect dominates the intensive margin effect. So in this case, when KC increases, aggregate output increases. But after a certain point, the extensive margin becomes very weak. The A bar curve becomes very flat. But the gap between the blue and red on the top right panel increases very fast. So so the negative effect dominates the positive effect after a certain point. Then after that, when you further increases KC, aggregate output declines. Okay. So in this process, the total output produced by the cronies and non-cronies, let's look at the lower right panel. As KC increases, the total output of cronies increases, the total output of non-cronies declines. So that's the basic results of this model. So this extended model shows that there is limitations to local government help. When the local government controls too much resources, it gives too much preferential treatment to some firms. It crowds out the business of other firms, and aggregate output may be hurt by this. So there seems to be an optimal range of local government capacity in this extended model. Then the question is KC fixed? In this model earlier, we assumed that KC is exogenously given, but political process may affect KC, and business environment may also affect KC. So imagine what happened. Let's talk about what happened after the international financial crisis struck the Chinese economy. When the international financial crisis struck, a lot of firms faced very strong negative shock from external demand. So you can see that in this model, we can assume that there is a negative shock to productivity across all firms. And if the local official doesn't want to see failure of their cronies, then they will try to provide more subsidies to these cronies. How can they provide more subsidies to these cronies? They will try to increase the amount of resources available to them. And in the case of China, after the international financial crisis, the central government actually accommodated the local demand for more resources. For example, a lot of local financing vehicles were encouraged to borrow a huge amount of fund from banks, from the financial market, from trust companies, etc. So with these relaxation under control over those local financial vehicles, the local government get more resources. When they get more resources, they can subsidize their cronies more. That's represented by an increase in KC and increase in tau. So in this chart, when KC is increased, it could actually hurt total output if KC is already started out to be very large. So that's one potential problem of this model. So the model I just presented seemed to capture some of the key ideas of the story. Behind the story I presented at the beginning, at the introduction. That is, local government officials have the capacity to help businesses overcome some of the obstacles. They also have the incentives to do that. So if local capacity is within a reasonable range, that is useful to promote business when the formal institutions are poor. However, this is not an ideal situation. As I described earlier, the extended model showed that this business model can cause allocative inefficiency. When allocative inefficiency is large enough, it can actually hurt the overall output. There are other problems as well. There is an implicit assumption behind our model. In our model, we ranked all the firms according to their level of productivity. We assume that the local government is able to pick the winners, to pick those efficient firms to help. But that becomes more and more difficult. Yesterday, when Fabrizio Zilibati presented the importance of, his talk about the Chinese economy, he mentioned that in the early stage of investment, of economic development, capital accumulation was more important. In that case, government can play a bigger role. But in the later stage of economic development, when innovation becomes more important, it's more difficult for the government to play a role. That is very consistent with our model here. When in the innovation stage, when you are in the early stage of economic development, you are catching up. You know what kind of investment to make. You know where to build a road, where to build a port, etc. You just observe what the more advanced economies had done in the past. That's also a point made by Professor Justin Lin. But after a while, after all the easy projects are invested in, then you have to innovate to achieve economic growth. But innovation is always uncertain. You don't know who will be the winner in the innovation contest, who will be the loser. So picking the winner to help becomes more and more difficult. So this model of using government official to help business to overcome problems becomes less effective. Okay, so this is another problem with the system. The third problem with the system is that because given the poor formal institutions, the business will have to seek local government help in order to be successful. So local government becomes very powerful. And local officials certainly enjoy such power. We assume that they get private benefits from it. So they don't have strong incentives to improve formal institutions. If formal institutions are improved, no one will require their help. So this is another problem. And we see that when the central government try to cut red tapes, it's met with a lot of resistance from local officials. And there are additional problems include this model biases against consumers instead of businesses, because local officials can get benefit from the success of businesses, and it's not subject to, it's not accountable that much to consumers. So you have this problem here. You see a lot of examples of this. For example, when it comes to environment, in the last few years, we have taken strong measures to protect the environment. But in the past, local officials had weak incentive to protect the environment because of their bias towards businesses. And if you look at land price, consumers pay much higher price for land. Residents pay much higher price for land than businesses do. It's still the case. And this model also lead to local protectionism. When local officials can get benefit from businesses in their region, they tend to protect their local businesses. And a sixth problem is that in the model, we assume that local officials can help overcome institutional obstacles, but not all institutional obstacles can be overcome by local effort. For example, property right protection. It's hard to imagine that a local government can protect the intellectual property right of a local firm. because if other firms in other region violates intellectual property right, the local official can do nothing about that. So in terms of intellectual property rights protection, there is no local solution. So this local incentives will not help. Then there are other obvious problems. The system is not fair. Not everybody can get help from the local government, and there can also be corruption in this process. So that's the theory. What about the evidence? I will quickly go through the evidence for the sake of time. Let me first present some evidence about political connections of entrepreneurs. The Association of Industry and Commerce conduct an annual survey of private businesses. They look at the political. They also ask questions about the political connection of these entrepreneurs, whether they are a Communist Party member, whether they are a member of the People's Congress, whether they are a member of the Political Consultative Committee, etc. And if you look at these, you can see that if you view these firms that whose owner is a member of the People's Congress or a member of the Political Consultative Committee as entrepreneurs who have better political connections, you can see that their size is strongly correlated with their political connection. Those firms that are better politically connected their firms have larger size. And the higher, the stronger is the connection, the larger is the size. And how does the political connection help them to achieve the larger size? If you look at the easiness to get bank loan, you can see very strong correlation between political connection and getting bank loan. And land sales. A big business is the real estate business, but in real estate business, the most difficult part of the business is getting land. And we did a simple econometric analysis about crackdown on corruption and land sales in a region. A researcher in USC developed a database on corruption cases. We find that if a region had a corruption case in this year, the next year land sales volume in that region drops. Until 2012. That's true until 2012. After 2012, that relationship stops to be there. So you can interpret this result according to your knowledge about the Chinese politics. And we also find evidence of local production. And we find that when an industry, there are more state-owned enterprises in an industry, that industry will experience more local protectionism. Then in the extended model, we argue that when the local government controls too much resource, it can actually hurt the economy because it causes more distortion. So I use the story of the international financial crisis to talk about how the local government can gain more resources. And let me present this finding we have. And before 2008, in the period of 2004 and 2007, we plot the distribution of capital productivity. On the left panel, we have the capital productivity of all these firms, and from smallest firms to the largest firms. And you can see that capital productivity is higher for smaller firms, lower for larger firms. That's natural. Then we also look at the growth in capital productivity. We can see that there is no strong correlation between the level of capital productivity and the growth of capital productivity. On the right-hand side, the curve is almost flat. That means all types of firms experience similar growth to capital productivity. That's prior to 2008. After 2008, everything changed. And you still, on the left panel, you still observe a similar pattern. That is, smaller firms are more productive in terms of capital productivity. Larger firms are less productive in terms of capital productivity. But the growth in capital productivity now is strongly correlated with the level of capital productivity. Those more productive firms experience faster growth. Those are already firms that are already more productive experience faster growth in productivity. But those firms that are less productive experience slower growth in productivity. So the dispersion in productivity among firms actually widened after 2008. So we believe that this is partly caused by more local government intervention in the local business. They have more resources to control with the development of local financing vehicles, so there is more distortion among firms. As a result, the aggregate returns to capital has been declining. So that's the story. Let me try to recap. What we try to explain in this paper is the seeming conflict between two observations. One is that formal institutions do not look very good in China. The second is that economy has been growing relatively fast. We explain this contradiction by the idea that local officials have the capability and incentives to help local businesses to overcome the obstacles that exist in formal institutions. And then we offered some analysis of this story and built some empirical support to the story. Okay? Thank you. I'll be happy to answer questions.
Professor Bai, thank you very much for sharing these insights with us. I think it's been highly interesting. We are a little bit short on time, but I would like to open the floor for 3 questions. And I already have 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay, you start.
So thank you very much for the presentation. So it's very stimulating, let's say. I actually saw more negative aspect of the model according to your conclusion. But I think maybe we can think that it can be a positive thing for the local government to do so. For example, in your model that determines the threshold, the herd, you fix the not only beta but also F,
right,
cost.
Right.
But if you think about a local government who is going to help a project or a firm that can incur a lot of other costs rather than direct cost that is related to the firm, to helping the firm. For example, environmental problem you talked about. For example, consumer problem you talked about. So if we relax this restriction, we consider F is an endogenous variable, and that can make your model a positive one because that reaches the level of the threshold, and that means government is using this intervention to control the quality of the firm. Right? So in addition to that, I think your evidence of a political connection probably is one of the cases, but not the case that is really reflecting your model, the nature of your model. For example, your Foxconn problem, Foxconn project, which is a good one. So if you raise the bar, the government can control the quality, and we do not need to bother by the competition issues, for example.
Okay,
Sorry.
yeah.
And that's my comment.
Okay, thank you.
I learned a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you. There are positive aspects to this. The motivation actually is talking about the positive aspects. The motivation is that the formal institutions are poor, but the economy grew. So that's one of the main messages of this. But I also want to emphasize that this is not an ideal setup. There are other costs to this. For example, the capital allocation may be inefficient, etc. All those problems I listed. So there are positive and negative aspects to this model of business of economic development.
Thank you very much, Professor Bai. I just want to ask a question which is not in your model. It's in your model, but not related to your model. And this is a question: how local government can change or cannot change institutions, i.e., what's the dynamics behind this institutional change, please?
Wow, that's a very difficult question to answer. It's a complicated story in that local government. Let's use the language of this model. Okay, if here the general measure of the formal institution is phi here. When this phi is too large, the business become very inefficient. Given theta, the benefit the local official gets is small. Okay, so to some extent, so you can also use the language of intensive margin and extensive margin. So given that firms seek help from the local government, firms are willing to give the local official some private benefit. The local official want to see more efficient firms. The local official want to see lower phi, that is. But at the extensive margin, if phi is too low, then there are fewer firms who seek help from the government official. So you have this trade-off for the local officials. They want to see better formal institutions to some extent. If they focus on the intensive margin, but they don't want to improve the business environment in general too much, so that no one seek their help. So that's what this model says. In reality, then it's that you can tell stories about either sides of this, either of the two aspects. And when I think one of the big agenda for Premier Li Keqiang is to push for 简政放权. And on the 简政放权, excuse my, it's cutting red tapes, basically. And then there are feeling that these initiatives doesn't get warm welcome from local officials. One phrase people use is that 政令不出中南海. For those people who understand Chinese, right? The central government initiatives doesn't go beyond the Zhongnanhai, the political compound of the central government. So you have central government trying to improve business environment, but it's not enthusiastically received by local officials. But in the early stage of economic development, everyone wanted to do some to achieve some improvement of general business environment. Otherwise, nothing can be done. So you have this conflicting interests. I'm not sure whether I answered your question or not.